Carley McCord and James Haralson here. He said, she said edition post game LSU versus Western Kentucky. James, they beat them by 28 points, and a lot of people said that this was going to be a great matchup, and that's exactly what we saw until the fourth quarter when LSU really started stepping things up. What was the biggest thing that you saw on the standouts on LSU's offensive side of the ball?
Well, I think the biggest standout for me, Carly, is Brandon Harris. I mean, 11 for 20, 286 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, this is the third straight game where he's just completely balled out on the
Yeah.
offense. And, it's funny because going into this season, that was kind of one of the narratives. LSU had everything clicking for it if only they can get the passing game together. Well, I think after tonight, if you've had any doubts about this passing game, you just got to go ahead and put those to bed because I think that LSU has a tremendously balanced offense. And, we could talk about Leonard Fournette. And again, he had another great night tonight with 150 yards. But Brandon Harris is completely controlling this and taking this team over. So I'm very interested to see him continue this momentum in a very, very tough environment, probably the toughest environment that he's played yet, 2 weeks from tonight in Tuscaloosa.
A lot of busted coverages on the defensive side of the ball, and that was a problem, and it kept coming back to haunt them throughout the entire game until they were able to get ahead. How do you think they fix that going into Tuscaloosa?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of problems, and I think it comes down to a lot of communication errors. And I mean, just looking at tonight, you knew that Western Kentucky was going to be a passing team, so we need to go ahead and clarify that right away. We knew going into this game that Western Kentucky, all they could really do is pass the ball. They did so phenomenally. Brandon Doughty, 325 yards, 3 touchdowns, 36 for 61. Okay, they obviously majority of the time pass the ball, but it has to concern you because Carly, I saw a lot of broken coverages against Florida. I saw a lot of broken coverages against South Carolina. So this is something that I think concerns me and should concern you if you're an LSU fan going into the game with Alabama here in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the special teams. Uh, Still seems to be a huge deal breaker for LSU. I mean, punting game not good. You said in your recap, I believe it was your second quarter or third quarter recap. You said they were just absolutely horrendous, and you didn't think they could get any better, and you don't think they were
Yeah.
getting better.
Yep.
Um, but Les Miles still continues to say that he has that utmost confidence in Jamie Keene and that he's doing everything that they're asking of him. I just don't believe that's necessarily the case. It can be the case. How do you think that affects them negatively going into Tuscaloosa?
Well, it's a big problem. All season long, I think it came down to two things really for LSU: the penalties and the special teams. They had several penalties tonight, so they didn't really clean that up in that respect. But special teams has just been consistently god awful. And when you give better teams better field position, they're going to capitalize on that. And up to this point, they haven't fixed the special teams. We've been hoping for it. Carly, I don't think that they're going to fix it at all for the rest of this season.
Unfortunately,
I've lost all faith in the special teams. So now, if you're an LSU fan, you have to wonder: is the offensive explosion between Fournette and Brandon Harris, will that be enough to overcome all the special team woes? Because I can tell you right now, it's going to be a long second half of the season for the special teams. I think they will continue to be absolutely horrific. I think the only bright spot for special teams has been Trent Domingue tonight. I think that he's been consistent. That's been the only positive thing that you can point to if you're special teams. Tonight they gave up an onside kickoff return. They gave up an onside kick to Western Kentucky. That almost happened against South Carolina, but they were bailed out with a penalty. There's so many problems right now with the special teams. And I just don't think that at the end of the day, it's going to get fixed. And that's going to be one of the big, big areas that Alabama, I think, is going to expose 2 weeks from tonight.
a few shakeups today in the top 25. You had Florida State get knocked off in a crazy, crazy win, as well as Utah. LSU's probably going to either stay right where they are or move up. Do you think that gives them any of a big head or a big ego going into Tuscaloosa against a team that lost against Ole Miss earlier in the season?
I don't think so at all. I mean, Carly, I think that for both LSU and Alabama, they were looking ahead to the game 2 weeks from tonight. I don't necessarily blame them. I mean, you look at Alabama; they had an emotional win against Tennessee, a very close one down to the wire. Tonight, LSU kept it close with Western Kentucky. I think that these two teams have been waiting for this moment. They've had this date circled on their calendars, and so now, excuse me, now they're going to go into the next 2 weeks now preparing for this. I really don't think that LSU is underestimating Alabama. Alabama has had LSU's number all the way since fall of 2011. Think about that. That's 4 years ago. That was LSU's last win against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I think that the entire season has been waiting for this moment. It's been hinging on this moment with Alabama.
And you have to remember that 2011 win was basically solely off of special teams alone. It was the special when it came down to the intangibles and what was better, who had what. It was the special teams that
Yeah.
LSU had the advantage over, and they don't have that this year. And going
Mm-hmm.
into a very hostile environment, Bryant Denny Stadium, playing their toughest opponent thus far this year, they've got to step up those special teams. Is there anything you could do? I mean, I know that we saw Nick Brissett. He had a good game on kickoff coverages. Dante Jackson did a great job stepping up tonight in absence of Trey White. Assuming Trey White's back, I mean, do you think that they still keep Trey White in there, or do you think they maybe go with Dante Jackson after what he was able to prove tonight?
This is gonna sound bad and awful, but I think that really anyone right now is a step up and an upgrade from Trey White on the punt return. Uh, do I think that they'll change it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they're going to go with. I just know that there's a ton of issues right now on the special teams that I just don't think can get corrected at this point in the game. I mean, we're talking about the season is over halfway done, and we still haven't corrected these issues yet. I just don't see that being fixed for Alabama. I see that being an issue against Alabama, and Alabama capitalizing on some of those opportunities.
A very good matchup tonight in Tiger Stadium. We saw a lot of great things, and we saw a lot of things that need work on. Obviously, they have a bye week next week, and then they go to Tuscaloosa to face the Crimson Tide, like we were saying, with their toughest opponent on the year, and to start off a very tough November stretch and the hardest stretch of their football schedule this season. Once again, I'm Carley McCord. He's James Haralson. Where he said, she said. You can get our podcast on eagle981.com. Also, follow us on Twitter at Carley McCord, at James Haralson, and at 1045 ESPN.